And is ENTP A-wing motherfucking 7 back? Maybe you, the ultimate cosplayer, can now be this type. You are on Reddit 24/7. ENTP 8 is real. I get that. You might be real. Probably not. Yo, what's good, you guys? Today is gonna be the second edition of TypeWatch. I'm gonna be going over some of the possible new combinations, things changing, and also something very juicy, a possible comeback of the ENTP 8-wing 7. So stay motherfucking tuned for that. Let's get on. So in the last edition, we discussed the IE Social 3 as something that people are discussing, but everyone's still skeptical about. Now that kind of changed. Nowadays, Social 3 IE, in terms of the classical socionics world, it's somewhat being accepted. For sure, I've seen many people make arguments for it, creating breakdowns, how this type actually works, how it's the archetype. So we're seeing a lot more change in that direction. We've even heard Ring kind of discuss the Social 3 IE and even broke it down in this video that you will see in the corner. So make sure to check that video out. It'll teach you everything you need to know about this combination. And with the EII Sexual 3, now that's kind of becoming the norm. That's becoming the reality. There is an argumentation that the Sexual 3 does not seem like a type that's very confident in sensorics, meaning it would be an intuitive type. A type that kind of does struggle a lot with SE, with aesthetics, appearance, and seemingly being very normative in those type of areas, right? So a lot of the stuff that about the Sexual 3 kind of makes sense, and not only that, we also have an example of this combination in person not that long ago. Marilyn Monroe, EII Sexual 3. So again, look into this combination some more, read about the Sexual 3. Again, if you have access to the standalone book, I might link it down below so you can make your mind up. Again, we're talking about EII in the classical socionics, none of this other bullshit that you guys are fucking sometimes hearing about using. Big one that might be making a comeback from what I'm seeing is the ILE Social 5. And of course, people will use Einstein as an example of the ILE Social 5. I'm gonna give you the raw, brutal truth. I'm not gonna geek out and circle jerk Enneagram 5. Okay, so that's for you guys. That's for you guys to figure this one out. I can link the book down below. Geek over it. Let me know how that went. And the biggest thing is gonna be in regards to the Social 8 new testimonies, new quotes. They're not, by the way, they are not leaks from new books. It's simply taken from the new edition of 27 Personalities in Search of Beings. So let's take a look at some of the Social 8 new quotes and what can we really understand from this type. Is it juicy? And is ENTP A-wing motherfucking 7 back? Maybe you, the ultimate cosplayer, can now be this type. You are on Reddit 24/7. ENTP 8 is real. I get that. You might be real. Probably not. But let's get into it. So those are the new quotes, the testimonies, and let's look over them and maybe we can have a new, deeper understanding of the type. So it's obvious that the Social 8, the defense dreams of others, the ideals, blah, 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 blah. Now this is interesting, right? Someone so strong represents them in a selfless way. Okay, right? However, the Social 8 is a mafioso, and we knew this. Everyone was like, yeah, kind of like the SP7, the Social 8 is kind of like a mafia boss. Okay, that makes sense, sure. But now look, mafioso dressed as a spiritual teacher. That's crazy work, right? You're getting an Enneagram 8 who's basically posing as a spiritual teacher. That's crazy work. But still, the primary focus is domination. Butt fucking, right? That's the primary focus. An imposer, right? Blah, blah, blah. He tends to think. And this is interesting. When others accept his domination, he becomes disappointed in them. It's like, I'm guessing this is related to the concept of strength. Can you really respect someone who just allows you to take as much as you want? Maybe that's how this works, right? If someone's weak, how can you respect weakness? So that's maybe what is happening. But here there's some orientation towards performance and even standards. So that's very interesting, right? There's so focus on the performance and standards that he believes people should have. Now, he feels no guilt and he feels no remorse. That would be weakness. So we see here, this makes sense. This is just the average Enneagram 8. Can you be an Enneagram 8 without having those traits? I don't believe that. I don't believe so. So this weak connection to guilt, weak connection to remorse makes sense that this is still present in this social 8. This is association with what is weak. That makes sense. I began to imitate the life of cynics and wandered the streets like one of them. That's crazy work. I was not Diogenes. I was even harsher. So he was harsher than Diogenes, who used to piss on people, by the way. He went on the street pissing on people. This guy's worse. Let's see what he means by being worse, right? My cynicism was to remain silent in the face of ignorance or the pathetic pride of others. So what this means is that people who are fucking ignorant, but the social 8, to him, they're beneath him. For the social 8, they are not even worth the saliva. To the social 8, I suppose, the ultimate punishment is silence. So even though he believes they're ignorant, he's not responding to them. That's how this seems. Now look, there was no merit in them for me to interrupt my process of continuous thought. It's like a very geeked out character who's thinking a lot, and when people are being ignorant, this motherfucker might not say shit. He might punish them with silence, with a glare, with a look. My cynicism was dry, without gesture, emptiness of presence and withdrawal like a slap. Again, he's not fighting. I didn't fight. I opened my eyes and I stared at them. See, contempt, showcasing contempt with his look. The guy's not fighting. The guy's not reacting. No, that's not how he goes about it. Fighting was for those more sexual, more animal, more brutish, more prone to provocation, better people, more interested in educated others, more loving towards others. For me, the point was to be like a cold metal dagger. And again, let each one drown in the miasma of their idiocy. Idiocy. It's weird. It's weird. Okay. Idiocy. Okay, for sake. Idiocy. It's also a dry character. It's very strange based on this testimony. He's not fighting. He's not provoking. He's not being... This is quite a controlled person. This is a person who feels those provocations, those impulses, those aggressions, those fighting. That's for those more primitive, not for the social 8. There came a time when I felt no guilt about anything, right? This makes sense. This is just the standard Enneagram 8. There's such a weak connection with guilt with this type. It makes sense, regardless of the subtype. I had developed a kind of no judgment, no pain, much less moral reflection. Interesting. I felt nothing, not life, not death, and much less guilt or shame. So this is very interesting. I'm guessing he is going through what we call the inner deadness of the Enneagram 8. Maybe he was unhealthy. He wasn't really growing. And he was experiencing basically a lack of humanity. That's the best way to describe this phenomenon with the Enneagram 8. It's you feel there's nothing. There's nothing. You want the excitement. You want the intensity. And the only way you can get it is by creating intense situations for yourself, right? But there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's those things don't really exist anymore. And I think this person was coped the fuck out. See, nothing can hurt me and nothing shook me. This is deadening. He is becoming so desensitized. There's nothing. The humanity is gone, right? And the funny thing with humanity is you cannot really enjoy positive human emotions either. The joy of loving someone or the joy of just being happy is not really as present. But on the other hand, pain is not present. Shame is not present. Guilt is not present. People cannot peer pressure you. People cannot really hurt you. People cannot really shame you. It doesn't work on you. But this is kind of a price you pay. And that price is also sacrificing some of the more positive emotions that we humans have, right? This guy's geeked the fuck out. This guy is Geekus Maximus. To be honest, if you guys even understand what he means here, write down below. At 14 years old, some friends invited me to the gorillas of the city. For me, that is not being intelligent. Look at this. I had already learned that violence comes from those who do not have range of possible responses to frustration. Now, what does this quote mean? This means that the social ape is not a fucking ape. The social ape is not a monkey. Look, there's placing kind of value on being intelligent. Not only that, but understanding that this kind of more brutish and direct way of going about things, this violence, is can be weakness because it comes from a frustration. I would never be like my father, only better, always better than my authority, right? And the gorilla was brute force. Mine was more refined, more political, but without politics, more furious, but cold, stronger, solid, absolutely nihilistic and cynical, but courteous and polite. So we're seeing a character, once again, this is just giving us an idea about the type. We are seeing a character not going just violence, impulsivity, expression, fury, right? Brutiness, but intelligence. He's using a more intelligent ways of navigating and approaching systems and problems, right? Look at this. He's never going to be like his father, but his way of rebelling, his way of doing things is not brute force. It's more refined, more political, right? But cold and firm. So it's very interesting, but also courteous and polite. This is such a different character than what many people think. Now look at this. I see in the leaders of guerrilla gangs the same arrogance of the oppressors. I see in the revolutionaries the same principles of injustice and greed for power. The atrocities in China and Tibet, of the Cubans in Africa, the Cold War, the death of the Paland, Fidel's tyranny, the Vietnam War, poverty, injustice, violence, thousands of alienated drinking Coca-Cola, everything disappoints me, and the possibilities offered by the false prophets and new rich seems so small that I feel drowned again in the world. There is no way out. To this, I add the terrible music of the revolutionary era, right? Which seemed to me the music of losers, pseudo-romantic, and then I suffer a profound disappointment. If those who are going to change the world are so lost and sick, who will do it? So when I'm taking this, we're seeing someone who's quite well versed on history, quite well versed on the bigger social sphere of the world. It makes sense. He's disappointed by it. The weight of the world around him disappoints him. No one's changing the world. Everyone's claiming that they want to. No one is doing the right thing in his eyes. This is a social subtype. Someone so kind of to that kind of bigger world for him, it takes a toll on him, and he's disappointed by it. At 14, I see how the world is subjugating my heroes. One by one, they fall. My brothers are crushed and torn apart by society, which corners them and confronts them in its purity and impeccability. Some of my friends are starting to turning into gloomy beings, into mammals, into social conformists, while others of my brothers, the artists, resist on the outskirts of the city and continue their nomadic life for a while until they fall, tired of the routine of life and the fatigue of their years. So again, you see more social orientation. The people at large. Seeing this, I swear to be more cunning. Not to fight head on against the system, but to sneak into it and from the inside to weaken it. To be the antisocial social. And thus, I learn to socialize in order to sabotage from the within status quo, the social beliefs. Then I decide to go into the world and live among the sleeping people. And why not appear to be one of them while never forgetting the premise of the rebel? Now, just look at this. We have someone who, again, those are different people, but we have someone who has the consistent theme of not just being impulsive, not being letting their frustration happen and let it flow. No, they are cunning. They are a rebel, but in a sense, in this crazy way, they are a hidden rebel, right? They go in a system. They don't just go in a system, but they go within it, and then they create change. They remember that they are a rebellious character, and they create change from within to destroy the system from within. And still blending in with the people. It's very interesting, right? To stay awake and be beyond good and evil, which makes sense. This is just the Enneagram 8 trait, beyond good and evil. To swear to never give up against the exploiters, the corrupt, and the unjust. Someone who possibly could use hierarchies, who could leverage his position within a hierarchy to gain advantage, to break a system, to create change. That's why many people, when there were those new quotes dropping, they were arguing for ILE. Of course, many of the arguments of the ILE social aid came from the fact that many of the social aids were NT types, like Marx was typed ILE in Oshawa, and he was typed as a social aid. But the truth is, many others also mentioned that SLE is a better fit. Why is this character who clearly is more in the shadows, right? This is not an expansive character. This is not like the SE, SE+. Expensive. He brings things to the attention, right? He is in the center of attention. That's the SE. The SLE is SE minus. But just even the way SCTI works overall in a block, that's how this manifests. They're able to leverage those systems, to fight within them, to get what they want, to create change whenever they want. I don't see anyone who seems to be very neurotic about their position, about systems, about hierarchies. We don't see that. We see someone who's able to maneuver them very well. Dryness in their character, a high degree of cynicism, falsehood in relationships. That's why some people are even saying that those new testimonies are much more VFEL than they are VFLE. So this one, I read it. It's just the amount of how geeked out this character really is. Okay, everything led to my mother, out of guilt and compensation, overprotecting me and over supplementing me with vitamins. I was weak and sickly as a child, almost insignificant and foolish. And little by little, I gained strength and the body required for my great feat in the world. To be useful, to be the doer, the effective one, the one who achieves, the one who not only occupies a place, but a strategic place. The one who achieves it. Envy was cold, it was love, it was the place being the chosen one. It was being the chosen one. So here we see with the social aid the amount of narcissism and megalomania that you'll see. I then became defiant. Little by little, I created a narcissistic madness of going from being the smallest to becoming the greatest in my family, in my school, in the university, in the meditation, in psychotherapy. In short, in the egoic war, I was the greatest in every place I reached. Do those new testimonies look like an SEE? No. I don't believe that they look like an SEE. And the SEE's approach and relationship with hierarchies and positions, systems, is much more neurotic. I don't think we cannot turn the SEE, TI vulnerable, TI superego into something like they move within a system, chilling, and they just change everything from within and they manipulate it. I don't think that makes any sense because you're a neurotic place, bro. Like you're sparked the fuck out about that, The way this type goes about doing things, blending in, being more conservative in their approach. But we can see how intellect is being used. So they're not given into the impulses of frustration, impulses of this emotionality. We don't see even much mention of emotions. For it to be the SLE, those quotes to belong to the SLE rather than the SE or even ILE. ILE has many issues with it. It's not a cynical type. ILE is not a cynical type. They're quite gullible in relationships, quite naive in relationships. They're not a visceral character. So there are some issues. I'm going to be open to the ILE. We'll see more. But I would rather say this is SLE than ILE, personally. Comment down below, what do you think about the new correlations? But most importantly, what do you think about those new testimonies? What are your thoughts about, when you read them, what is this? What is this type? Do you think this is the SEE? Do you think this is the ILE? Or maybe this is the SLE? How those quotes change your perception of the social aid? I'm out, I'm Charles, and I'm bouncing.